Darkness, my old friend, I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I was alone in narrow streets of cobblestone, beneath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp. When my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs that the voices never share, and no one dare disturb the sound of silence. Fool, said I, you do not know silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you, take my arms that I might reach you, but my words like silent raindrops fell and echoed in the wells of silence. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made, and the sun flashed out its warning in the words that it was forming, and the sign said the words of the prophets are written on subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sounds of silence.
Remember, when you're analysing, look out for the choice of words, imagery, and poetic devices. What are the flavours of the words? What do they inspire in your mind? Think about the symbolism, the story beneath the story, what it deals with, and how you can tell. So, the sounds of silence, a beautifully poignant, contemporarily pertinent soundscape. The titular oxymoron connotes the dreamlike, otherworldly, mystical, providing a baseline for the indescribable and the human aspect of silence's ramifications. Silence has a sound. It's loneliness, isolation, disconnection, dehumanisation. It's overpowering and omnipresent. It's a product of modernity. And when it's not confronted, we become willingly subservient to its will. From the opening personification of darkness, the listener is drawn into a world of isolation and confusion, anger and bitterness. It's poetically elegant. The narrator takes the form of both perpetrator and protestor, asserting his own suffering, the suffering of others, and subsequently, the suffering of all. Hello darkness, my old friend, I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. The narrator's calm, assured, well-trodden relationship with sadness. It's direct, sincere, and alludes to a problematic life replete with depression, sadness, and melancholy, connoting a removal of the self from society. His waking mind is tainted, changed by the remnants of nightmares, bleeding into the quiet moments of self-reflection. The language is gentle, soft, sleeping, and yet unsettling, creeping, planted, remains. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone. 'Neath the halo of a street lamp, I turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sounds of silence. Uneasy and isolated, trapped inside one's own mind, the biblically restorative potential of the light, a halo, turned into a violent recourse through the narrator's indifference in turning his collar to humanity's plight. Note the fierce language, stabbed, flash, split. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more, people talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs that voices never share, and no one dared disturb the sound of silence. Violently illuminated, clear and lurid, humanity stands in reaction to their paradoxic suffering, the evils of isolation, negation of communication, and ultimately removal of understanding and emotion through our isolated states. Silence becomes deified. Humanity no longer communicates. Its connections are broadcast. A hive mind devoid of individuality and thus compassion. A sleeping mass of inert impotency. Fool, said I, you do not know. Silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you. Take my arms that I might reach you. But my words, like silent raindrops, fell and echoed in the wells of silence. The narrator asserts his anger, both at humanity and himself, the dangers of apathy and isolation, availing his own experience of darkness and solitude, the insidious nature of silence. Unchecked, it sleeps throughout, corrupting, corroding, and distancing. He stands to show the way, through both audible and tactile connection. Through simile, his words are soundless drops in the dark, the well of silence, unending, confining, and devoid of life. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made, and the sign flashed out its warning in the words that it was forming, and the sign that said, the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sound of silence. Devoid of human connection, the masses worship penitent before the pantheon of consumerism, our manufactured world of marketing, supply and demand, lost in this self-erected neon landscape of harsh light, isolation and control, devoid of empathy, emotion and feeling. The deeply allegoric lyrics conjure the spirit of epic poems of old, embedded with archetypal aspects of the human condition, community, conversation, compassion, and their corrosion through ignorance, greed and narcissism. To be isolated, removed from one another, separate, is to fall into the darkness, alone and cold, even while stood in crowds of thousands. Our humanity without connection falls silently into the well of silence, emotionally unfulfilled and unable to connect.